had lunch with Phil Pournelle, Jerry Pournelle's son. And Phil and I finished Jerry's last novel, Mamelukes, between us. Okay. Well, what we met to have lunch, to discuss during lunch, was where we go with that series. Do we continue it further? And we officially decided that there will be a minimum of 2 more collaborative novels in that universe. Phil has both his dad's notes, which I gather are not the sort of encyclopedic notes that I leave, kind of thing. But he's also, he also discussed it with his father many, many times while Jerry was still alive. So he has some pretty clear ideas about where Jerry was planning on going. And he and Tony and I talked about ways that we can riff off of those ideas to move the storyline forward and do it in a way that hopefully doesn't wind up stepping on the beloved central characters of Jerry's books. I think that the worst mistake you can make if you're going to continue a series, unless one of you has been the collaborative partner of the person who created the series. If, for example, if something happened to me, okay, Jacob would be well placed to continue the Gordian novels. Okay, he would probably have to do it in a way that I wouldn't, because I have more in-depth knowledge of history than he does, which is one of the reasons that the 6th century chapters are being reworked. Because I was feeling badly, I wound up sort of sloughing that off on him. He had to write them in the rough draft, and he kind of did it on the assumption that I would change anything that needed changing. And I felt so cruddy that I didn't realize, my writer's ear didn't pick up on the fact that it needed to be tweaked.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? And that was on me, not on him, kind of thing. But Jacob continuing the books, they would all still have the Jacob part of the DNA in them. Okay, well, Jerry's gone, and neither of us worked with Jerry while he was still here on this series. So we have to be very careful, because the only sample of Jerry DNA we have is already there. Do you see what I'm saying? So we are definitely thinking that what we need to do is, if we continue the story, we have to continue it in the writer's voice that works for the two of us, rather than trying to do a pastiche and imitate Jerry's style. The writers' voices are very individual. And in some ways, they're individual in ways that the readers may not really pick up on, because there's a lot of little stuff in there. There's word choices, there's pacing, there's all kinds of things that go into how writer A tells a story. Okay, well, writer B may be able to write the characters the same way, but that's not his or her natural writing voice. And therefore, they are constrained in trying to be someone else. And that means they're not going to tell the best story that they could tell, and that somebody who has been deeply in love with writer A's voice is going to go, I don't know, man, it just didn't quite make it for me. Okay, so it's better to say, we love Jerry. We love these books. We are not him. We want to continue the story that he created. We want to continue it in a way that the people who love those stories will continue to love. And people who hadn't read those stories, if they pick up the new books and go back to read the earlier ones, will say, oh, not what happened here. You know what I'm saying? And I think it takes a certain degree of confidence on writer B's part to be willing to do that, Okay, because I mean, after all, you're picking up the Tran books for folks my age. Okay, are iconic in a lot of ways. They were military fiction, science fiction written in the late 70s, middle 70s. I think the first one is set in like 72. It's while the CIA was fighting the Cubans in Angola. That's how far back this series begins. It was roughly contemporaneous events. So the books have been around. This is the first new book in the series in like 25 years. Okay, and that tells you how long they've been around, that there's been a 25-year hiatus. Okay. And so for us dinosaurs, all right, these are books of our youth. You know what I'm saying? For a lot of younger readers, they never heard of them, which is a pity, but it happens. And so I'm hoping that Mamelukes will pull a bunch of readers who didn't know Tran in to go and find them. Okay, most people really and truly who think about Jerry, who was an excellent writer on his own. Most of them think about him and his collaborations with Larry Niven. Okay, Lucifer's Hammer. There's a bunch of them that were. I mean, they are absolute gold standard classics in the field. Okay, Mamelukes is the the book that's coming out in October, I think, from Bain. And it is, some new ingredients are added. Jerry added them. Jerry did the draft of the first half of the book. He'd left notes about where he intended to go with the second half. Phil and he left two possible routes for the climactic action segment. And Phil and I went with the one that Jerry had been kind of, I don't know, kind of thing. But it was partly because there's a naval battle involved. And I think Jerry was not as comfortable thinking in terms of naval battles as he was land engagements. Okay. But anyway, he'd left us the notes. And he'd also left us what I think was most important of all. He had left the theme of the work, which was that despair is the only unforgivable sin, which I thought was really, really interesting, but it really informed how Phil and I approached that second half of the book. And I will say this, the scene that ends the book, okay, which I think is very, very strong, was originally written by Phil, not me. I tweaked it some, but the main thing was I moved it from where he had originally inserted it to make it the final scene of the book because it was so strong, and putting it there worked so perfectly with what Jerry had left as the theme of the work. Okay. And I think it's a strong book, and we tried really, really hard to respect Jerry's work, and I tried really hard to respect Phil's work because it was his dad's book. You know what I'm saying? And I think it came out well.
So has that come out for the first readers list, or is that going to come out?
I don't remember whether I've sent that out on the first readers list or not. If I haven't, it's about ready to be sent out. It really, under normal circumstances, I would have sent it out when I sent the manuscript to Tony. But because the project was kind of under wraps, And because it was a collaboration with Phil, especially, I didn't feel as comfortable about that as I would otherwise.
Okay.
So, I probably, if I haven't sent it out, it needs to be going out.